One of his good friends said the guy had custom-made bathing suits.
And Joe Connell's business partner and so-called best friend, Chris Rivers, had told detectives that the luxury-loving newlyweds were living beyond their means.
How much money would you say he's getting out of the business as opposed to?
Not that much. Not enough to do that lifestyle. No way.
Investigators consider the possibility Joe and his new bride, Olga, could have been killed by an angry creditor.
It was one of the possible theories out there of what could have happened.
But without any other leads, the focus of the investigation remains on Chris Rivers and Joe's sister Kelly, who'd been locked in a bitter family feud with him at the time of the killings. And she would also come under the close scrutiny of a national TV news program.
Talking about the possible theory that Kelly Connell had committed the murder.
But police ultimately verify Kelly's alibi for the night of the murders. She tells Crime Watch Daily, despite their feud, she truly loved her brother and his bride.
I've never seen two people in love like that. That was the happiest I've ever seen my brother. She's beautiful, sweetheart, sophisticated, and she treated my brother wonderful.
And detectives become convinced she had nothing to do with their murders.
She had had a medical procedure done not a week or two before this that would have rendered her more or less not capable of killing her brother and his wife.
Now that leaves just Chris Rivers, who had already aroused the suspicion of investigators by ratting out Joe for using steroids and accusing him of selling them at their auto shop.
And I went in there, and I ripped the whole place apart. And I found it back there, and it was a lot.
Rivers didn't realize he had just snitched on himself, too.
Did you secure a search warrant for the business?
We did.
What did you find when you went in?
Various records, computers, and the steroids that Chris told us right where they were.
And surprise, surprise, Rivers is arrested.
What was he charged with?
Possession of steroids and it was a felony.
And now Rivers, out on bail, refuses to talk anymore to detectives.
Once he was charged, he retained legal counsel. So from that point on, we couldn't bring him back in.
But to their astonishment, he starts talking to someone else.
He said, here's the deal. We found drugs in your building. Joe's dead. You're responsible.
Chris Rivers gives a video-recorded interview to a local newspaper reporter, Chris Barish.
How smart was that?
I think in retrospect it proved to be quite problematic for him in some of the responses that he gave.
Investigators couldn't believe it was the same man who had spoken so ill of his dearly departed business partner just days earlier.
Ever since he started doing this whole drug thing, I kind of distanced myself from him.
But now Rivers is telling Barish of the Wilmington News-Journal just the opposite.
How's your relationship up to the day he died?
Figures you see somebody every day, 12 hours a day more than you see your wife. So we were pretty much best friends.
And the police wanted our copies of the interview because they wanted to match it to their, and they really wanted to pick it apart to look for inconsistencies.
And it's Joe's my best friend, and how broken up he was, and how close they were, and how much, they got along.
Investigators know that Rivers is either lying to Barish or lying to them.
Did it not add up to what he told you initially?
It just didn't seem genuine throughout it.
Like when Rivers calls detectives telling him Joe and Olga had been murdered.
I just didn't believe it. I still don't believe it.
And investigators didn't believe Rivers.
You could just watch it and say he's lying. He's lying.
So now they dig a little deeper into his life and make a shocking discovery.
You're looking at a guy who's using massive amounts of opioid-based painkillers, not to mention cocaine, who is complete financial mess.
And allegedly flipping out under the pressure of massive debt.
During this time, I was getting reports about Rivers unraveling, that his drug use was out of control, and that he was paranoid, and that he was telling people that he had done the murders.
Rivers would also be arrested twice more for robbery and criminal mischief linked to his drug abuse.
He was really just falling apart.
And then the investigators find the proverbial smoking gun.
The biggest break and the most compelling evidence we had in the case were the phones.
Uncovering records of deleted text and calls showing that Chris Rivers had kept in contact with a career criminal named Joshua Bay the night Joe and Olga were murdered.
There was this whole flurry of texts and phone calls. Chris is contacting Joe, but he's also contacting Bay, and Bay's contacting 2 other people.
And Bay would eventually cut a plea deal in return for spilling the beans.
He's the linchpin of this entire investigation.
The only way out of this is to turn on Chris.
Telling investigators Rivers had promised him $60,000 to arrange the murders, which Bay says were committed by a pair of hitmen he hired, Aaron Thompson and Dominique Benson. But why did Rivers want his partner and man he called best friend dead? Cops always say, follow the money. And when they do, it leads to a $1 million life insurance policy, a policy taken out when Joe and Rivers went in business together.
He's greedy. He has debts. He decided Joe has to go. But if he's going to collect the insurance policy, Joe's married, so his wife would probably get his share of it. So he's got to get rid of her too.
Rivers would be arrested at his auto shop.
What was his reaction?
It didn't seem surprised. I believe he knew what was coming.
He would ultimately be convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life plus 50 years in prison for plotting the murders of Joe and Olga Connell. Rivers' middleman, Joshua Bay, pleaded guilty to first-degree conspiracy and got 5 years behind bars. Aaron Thompson was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy for being the triggerman and sentenced to life. And Dominique Benson was sentenced to 5 years for conspiracy after being acquitted of being the second triggerman.
What the case was all about was a young couple that were just starting their lives together and had to come to this end for no reason but Christopher Rivers' greed.
Joe's sister Kelly says nothing will ever heal her heartbreak over the loss of her brother and his bride, the horror of initially being suspected of killing them, and the agony of seeing what the murders have done to their loved ones, as she revealed in a victim impact letter read to the jury.
The hardest part has been seeing how much pain Christopher Rivers has caused to my father, my brother, my mom, and my children. I want to take their pain away, but I can't. It never goes away. We lost the heart of our family.
I'm Chris Hansen. If you like this story, make sure you tune in every day to Crime Watch Daily. You can find where the show airs in your city at crimewatchdaily.com. Watch it live or record it on your DVR and watch it at night. And to all those criminals out there, remember, we are watching.